All right, and there we are. It is the NBA live before lock. Had to think about that. I've got NFL on the mind. I was on the show earlier today with Nolan Kelly. We were kicking it off. Exciting game in overtime there. If you are a Minnesota Viking fan, if you're a Saints fan, it happened to you again. And I am waiting to go watch my Seattle Seahawks. I've not peeked at a score yet, Eddie, but that game is going on right now. How are you feeling about NFL Sunday? Do you have a favorite NFL team, I should ask?
I do not. I'm so tied in with. I mean, I'm in Ohio, so I have sort of I'm closer to Cincinnati, but I've been always sort of a Browns fan. I have a couple Browns jerseys, so I guess they would be my favorite team. But when I don't work on it, I'm pretty far away from the sport at this point. But I'll say Cleveland is the closest I have to a favorite team at this point. But I've watched less than an hour of football this year.
And nothing wrong with that at all. We have so many things going on between all of the different daily fantasy sports. I'm going to just let everybody know that we are live here in Premium Slack. All right. What else? There we go. And that's it. So we got a 4-gamer. Oop, there's the alert that lets us know we're on, what's that site called? Twitch. Twitch, for those of you that like video games. Eddie, do you want to tell everybody your Twitch channel? Because you like video games.
Yeah, that'd be twitch.tv/FastEddieFear. We'll stream between once and 7 times a month and have a good time. But also occasionally, I think starting next week, I'm going to start doing NBA recaps middle of the day, the next day. I've often lamented that, understandably, DFS, especially for any of the daily sports, NFL, you have more time to look back. But for daily sports, every day you get up on Monday and you get ready for that slate, and then you're watching that slate and you're sweating that slate, and the games conclude for that day, and then you're on to Tuesday, and there's not a lot of time to look back and see what can be learned from Monday. I know they do some of that. Someone mentioned on the early shows, I think, the whatever we call our morning show,
the strategy show.
Yeah, it does a bit of a look back. But I'll probably start twitching, a half hour every day around noon or something, just for here's some takeaways I had from that, build up some Twitch viewers or something. So I'll start putting up more basketball content on that channel soon, hopefully.
Excellent. Yeah, we look at it a little bit on the strategy show, but not nearly enough for the daily sports. For baseball and basketball, there's just so much to look at for the day before. But we do a pretty good job for NFL because you've got that nice week between things. But it's always good to retroactively look and see if your strategies, thoughts, tendencies, etc., paid off or did not pay off the night before, especially if you're doing a lot of mass multi-entry or playing a bunch of different lineups, which is essentially the same thing. But oftentimes you only look at the really good ones and you just skip the really bad ones or the ones that just missed. So that's a lot of times where you can find different leaks in your strategy, in your game, etc. Today we have... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I want to talk about the basketball itself some more. To my understanding, the refreshes or the lookbacks we do now are largely DFS about. I want to talk about things we actually learned from the games and projections, because there's always, every time we do one of these shows, I have 3 hours to talk about and only talk for 35 or 40 minutes, and as such I never quite get everything out I want to. So this will be another way that I can just talk about observations in the league, try to keep people a little more on point.
All right. Well, speaking of on point, let's jump in for 4 games. We have a lot of choices today, a lot of moving parts here. Let's see. The key ones that we were well aware of is Kevin Love. He wanted his big contract. He got it. Now he doesn't like the team he's on. He is missing yet again against Minnesota. Almost feels like Rajon Rondo skipping out against his former teams. Funny how that works out. Oh, and Kyrie Irving, I guess we can put in that bucket.
Yeah, Kyrie being the classic one there. He missed like 9 out of 10 games against the Cavs or something. Like it was quite a thing, and Boston collectively.
So, but Kyrie, may need surgery, may not. They're gonna check again in a month or so. I thought he was nearing a return.
Keep cashing those checks, Kyrie.
Yeah, I wonder if he and Kevin Durant are touring the world or something right now, because they're certainly not playing basketball.
Yeah, but, well, Durant, yes, Durant came by his, honestly, to say the least. Kevin Durant gets a bad rap. I'm not saying he's the cuddliest guy in the world, but he's a phenomenal basketball player and gets caught up in a lot of bullshit. Same thing with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is a tremendous basketball player, never quite gets the credit he deserves for and how good he was to New Orleans for how long before finally being like, okay, getting a little older here. I'd like to occasionally see a playoff game. Like I'm very sympathetic with those guys.
Absolutely. All right. So Justice Winslow continues to be out with his back issue. They had some sort of update. I don't know. It's like a compression fracture or something like that, but it's apparently relatively serious. And by compression fracture, I mean some sort of really deep bruise kind of thing. But he's out. Jimmy Butler, game time decision, did not feel well during shoot around. I'm sorry. He is a back as well.
It is back. Yeah, it's a little different than not feeling well. Yep. Just because, and that's something we can talk about a lot. I've noticed in this combination of observing DFS and personal experience, someone who is ill is less frequently encumbered when playing. Like if you feel sick and decide to play, I would say that I think your ability to play, if you play and don't leave the game due to your illness, which does happen once in a while, though I still think less frequently than someone who is playing with a back or a leg injury, you're going to play very nearly 100%. If you're playing with a knee or an ankle or a back or something of that nature, it's more frequent to me. And through, again, my own experience, anyone who's done any kind of athletics, you get some adrenaline pumping and you don't feel your stomach anymore. And most of the time you're just out there kicking ass if you decide to play. So that is a relevant thing for me. If he was, if it was illness, I still feel very good about Jimmy Butler, presuming he plays and starts. But I would feel even better if it was just a rumbly and a stumbly.
Yes. Yeah, very good call out on that one. Dave Hanna, $2 super chat. Hi, Dave. Was it? We appreciate you.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks, man.
Post us some food pictures in chat. I know, Josh. Well, wait till Monday morning so Josh can see what you're having for breakfast. That will be more bang for your buck. Back over here to continuing. CJ McCollum is out. He has an illness, so he will not be playing. This, of course, is our first game, our 6 o'clock start. We continue to have Jake Layman dealing with the sore foot. He's going to be out for a little while. Kevin Porter was out last night. Pardon me, Kevin Porter Jr. He is back tonight. It was a personal issue. I'm not sure what, but he is available. Tristan Thompson, questionable. This is a back-to-back 3 and 4, and it's also going to be 4 and 6 here for Cleveland that plays day after tomorrow. He's dealing with an illness. We have a host of news that I haven't seen any updates with here, Eddie, from Minnesota, but we're looking at Karl-Anthony Towns.
We'll cover that in a bit. But
missing a 9th game. Wiggins potentially
6 questionable guys. Yeah.
And Von Teague, etc. We mentioned Love is out. Anthony Davis played last night, had a good game. Was that last night? I've lost track of night. Was that 2 nights ago? That was 2 nights ago.
The Lakers played. They're on an island. They didn't play last night.
Thank you. It was. I was thinking
Golden
of all
State played. There's a lot of teams on California back to back. So there's 2 of them going through it right now, including Detroit. But they were in Golden State last night. So.
Yes, thank you. And I was thinking of all the former Lakers that were playing late last night against the Kings. I was watching that game, so I was rooting for Lonzo Ball. I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. How was I rooting for Lonzo, but not Anthony Davis? Lonzo Ball did have a couple nice games in a row there. But wrapping it up, that is about it. We're still waiting on terms, the availability of Markieff Morris. He's missed a few games now with a sore foot. And then the real question is, how much is Andre Drummond going to play? Let alone, is Detroit going to be able to stay in this game? They're 14-point underdogs at the moment. So those are the big moving parts, Eddie. Since we just have 4, do you want to give your thoughts on Portland and Miami here? Or we can go however you'd like to tonight. We did have good success last night, just kind of going in a free flow. I say we, but you nailed a lot of things. We had some nice screenshots and thank yous last night.
Yeah, last night was good. Someone told me the line out. The placeholder I read out on air put up 360 some odd or something, and was like 2 spots from the nuts or something. But last night I was on Tatum from the Celtics and Alec Burks and Harrison Barnes and Donovan Mitchell didn't get quite as much as I expected, but still put up quite a good number. And playing Troy Brown over Jordan McRae in a single lineup turned out to be critical for a number of people. So yeah, last night was gratifying. That went well. And shout out to you too. You do every bit as much as I do. Luka, of course, although that wasn't terribly hard to see coming. But and like Luka and Trae Young is where I said I would start on FanDuel. So yeah, that all worked out very well. So hopefully we can do something that well tonight. I would start by saying, please pay attention to news as we get close to break tonight. It seems obvious, but there's a million things going on, and especially with final NFL game of the weekend is going to be wrapping up right as DraftKings locks. People, one of the things I see on Twitter the most is that NBA isn't beatable anymore, and that the edge is gone. And like many things, that's an oversimplification. There are different edges, and the edge is lesser, and the rake is higher in many places. So it's I don't know who our sponsor is today, but that set up a hell of a segue for you. But one of the edges that is left is pre-locks, post-lock swapping, where late swap is available, still just isn't implemented enough. If I think of all the big cashes and great days we've had this year, a good half of them are just some guy should be, you can use Jimmy Butler today, depending what time he gets ruled in or out. And this, unfortunately, let's presume that it wasn't the first game. Let's assume instead of them being the lone 6:00 game, and every other game is at least 90 minutes post facto, let's assume that the
here's a real one that affected everybody. Alfred Payton 2 nights ago, Friday night, and Frankie Ntilikina, etc. That's a good example too.
Yeah. But there was one game this year, for example, with Towns was out and Wiggins was questionable, and Wiggins was ruled in like 12 minutes prior to his game in a moderate matchup. I can't remember what it was offhand, but in a vacuum with no Towns, and he had been blowing up, he should have been 20-something% owned. And I was in the Slack hammering people, get yourself some Wiggins now, and he ended up being 4.5% owned and went off for 60-some, and he just should have been 20% owned, even at, I think it was like 7,800 that night. It was a number, but getting him at 4% owned is brilliant. And so Jimmy Butler's a good situation tonight. Jimmy Butler, in our early ownership projections, when I looked a couple hours ago, was projected to be 40% owned. If that was an 8:00 game and he got ruled in at 7:45 even, he'd end up being 18 or 20% owned. So please keep track of things and make some moves tonight. It's obviously every day, but especially today, figures to be a significant edge. And of course, obviously, FanDuel only running with the 3-game slate tonight, so they don't lock for a full 90 minutes afterwards. And for DraftKings, keep in mind, keep your Portland, Miami players in the top half of your lineup. Our juiciest game is sort of our late game anyway, so be prepared to be agile, and you got to keep your head on a swivel when you find yourself in a vicious cockfight.
All right. We've got to say thank you to Fantasy Draft that does make dreams come true without rake in all of their contests. The only rake-free site out there. How does it work? Well, you actually get a subscription for the amount of money that you can play. Everybody can play $100 every 30 days. So everybody has a chance, whether you have a subscription or not. If you want to play more than that, like the one I use is $5.99. I can play up to $1,000 in buy-ins per 30 days. That same $5.99 would cost me, if I put that $1,000 in play on the other sites, about $100 to $150, depending on the format and style of game I was playing, which is better, $100 or $5.99. I'll take that $5.99. And even though I have the subscription and don't play there every day, it still comes out in the wash for me as soon as I play, what, 40, $50, $100, something like that. So there we are. So as long, even though I mostly just play on weekends there, I don't mind. $5.99 is easily recouped.
Yes.
I'm just looking. Dave dropping more dollars in chat. Thank you, Dave. Very kind of you.
I appreciate that. Apparently that is split up among the hosts, or I'm told it will be. I don't think it has been, or if it has been, I didn't notice it hit my account or something. But apparently that does go directly to the hosts. And remind me, I should talk to Tom. Some of that should go to producers or anyone who's working behind too, because we should make sure those guys, just because they don't happen to be on camera, they're still working the same show. So anyone who's producing a show should get a take as well. But that does go directly to us apparently, so that is much appreciated.
And in my case, it's going to go to my wife.
Well, yeah, yes, I'm not changing my shirt back. I don't know what that's about, but it was a good show. It was
your lucky 2-day shirt.
Yeah, no, it was, and a lot of times I end up wearing like the same sweatshirt 2 days in a row because it's cold down here in the basement. Unless I want to sweat everyone out upstairs, I have to keep it like 58, 60 degrees. So I'm always wearing a sweatshirt. So I used to get some crap like, dude, take a shower, change your shirt. frequently I would just have a sweater next to the desk and I would pull it back on over a new shirt. But we've spent too much time talking about my clothing choices. Let's get down to business.
Hassan Whiteside coming back. He's familiar with the environment, the heat, the humidity. Oh, the Heat. That's right. He used to play for the Heat. Let's start off there. What do you like with Hassan Whiteside? Reasonably priced and a counter move to a less than or a very discounted DeAndre Ayton. What do you got here in our first game?
Yeah, I would have to think long and hard as to, at their prices on DraftKings, for example, whether or not I prefer DeAndre Ayton or Bam Adebayo. I don't consider it just necessarily a pivot to Ayton. I like Ayton quite a bit, and we can reasonably safely presume against this lineup we will get the same. Again, for those who didn't notice, the Suns in the last game started Ayton at the 4. Basically completely kicking Dario Saric out of the lineup, where he hadn't been playing much anyway because they were playing some Oubre at the 4 and some Cam Johnson at the 4, and they were just running really small at the 4. Frank is still out, which makes this maneuver a little safer, but against this front court that's still fairly sizable, and Ayton I do think can do a decent job guarding Jaren Jackson Jr. I do think they run that again, but we don't know that necessarily for sure. Ayton is probably safe either way. It's got more to do with whether or not you can get Ayton getting his 32 minutes and still get 28, 29 minutes out of Aaron Baines, who's a very compelling option at his price, and having forward eligibility, oddly, since Ayton is the one who's actually playing forward. But Baines has the forward eligibility on DraftKings, I believe. Yeah. So there's a lot going on here. Someone asked in the chat a minute ago, who starts with McCollum out? I have no idea. I will guess Gary Trent Jr. Now, it's going to be Gary Trent Jr. or Anthony Simmons. But CJ McCollum, I believe, has not missed a basketball game this year. And this is a radically different game. So last year, most of the time, Jake Layman, who is out today for the Timberwolves, would catch that start. But McCollum has not missed a basketball game yet this year, to my knowledge. It will be Anthony Simmons or Gary Trent Jr. Presuming we get that name before lock, I'm probably going to immediately favor the other one because it's plenty good for both of them. And the guy who gets the start probably picks up a few more minutes, but also loses more usage, moving from a more bench role to playing alongside Lillard and Whiteside the whole time. And it's not a particularly brilliant matchup. So, for example, if we get news that Gary Trent Jr. is starting, I would be more inclined in a single lineup, a la yesterday with the whole, Jordan McRae, Troy Brown thing, to play the other guy. So if Trent was starting, I would probably prefer Simmons in one lineup. If Simmons was starting, I would probably prefer Trent in one lineup. But they should both be very, very strong options on a slate where not a lot of the value is great. For the record, at the beginning of the day, my favorite value play today is Kevin Porter Jr. I have him at 34 minutes. They've really gone to him in the past. This is the 6th game this year that Kevin Love has sat, and in most recently was the one against the Timberwolves, as you alluded to 8 or 9 days ago. But additionally, the first game that he sat this year was also a game that Larry Nance ended up sitting. And in that game, Kevin Porter started, led the team in minutes and points, I believe, and looked pretty good. I like the matchup pretty significantly for him, but I just looked at him get a real preponderance of minutes. So I would probably, for raw projection, end up liking him point per dollar a little bit less than whoever gets the start for Portland. So if we said Trent was starting, point per dollar, my rankings would probably end up being Trent, Porter, Simmons, but I would probably invert them in order I want them in GPPs, but no drastic differentiation between them all. But I don't think, especially with the news breaking, Porter will be quite as owned as he should be. They should give him a long leash here.
All right. Let's see. I had a couple of questions here. How are you liking Melo? Is it you kind of hit on it, but
I didn't. Yeah, you asked me about the whole game. Well, I didn't really get too
chat's
deep into
moved on. Come on, no.
No. It's my fault. You asked about the game, and then I went on a tour and ended up talking about the Cavs. So pardon me. I think Melo is fine. Melo is very Kyle Kuzma to me. Now, having McCollum out is really relevant for him because just his number of shots opens up. But 6K Melo, I'm generally not going to be a fan of. 6K Melo against the Heat, I'm generally not going to be a fan of. You take McCollum out, and now I'm okay with it. Previously, he's just as going to put up 17.6 rebounds, an assist, and maybe for a while at the beginning of this year, he was really putting up some nice fantasy scores. He was getting what for him were unsustainable defensive numbers. Melo is not a guy who picks up a lot of steals and blocks, and randomly for the first few weeks was picking up a lot of steals and blocks, as in more than he was 10 years ago when he was in his prime. That's not something you're going to see a lot. And with all those other guys out there in a tough matchup, you really need Melo to, it's not a high percentage shooter anymore. So you need him to do volume shoot and just sort of have a hot day and make 12 of 17 shots for him to bust out some sort of amazing GPP score. So Lillard is the guy you want most here as a reaction to McCollum. I haven't had time to properly really contextualize him relative to other players, but it is a real and valuable boost for Lillard. So Lillard, the value guys, Whiteside to some extent. But it is a somewhat difficult matchup for Whiteside. Obviously, the ceiling is there. Centers have struggled understandably against this Miami team this year, but he's I'm trying to remember which is the price where he's priced much more advantageous. I think FanDuel, he's like 9.8 and DK is like 8.5. 8.5 feels good. Center on DraftKings is a bit of a sticky wicket. I like Adebayo. I like Ayton. I like Baines. I like Whiteside. So it's McCollum being out, I do think is an additional positive bonus for him. I would like all the guys I just mentioned a little more than Andre Drummond. Still Andre Drummond, he's not out of play, but you are dealing with back-to-back kind of worst possible matchup for him. So it's an ownership question. I presume he's going to be, 8-9% owned, and that's probably about where that number should be. So Trailblazers sort of in toto there. A little more interest in Melo now. He's fine. He's like 6K. It's still not a tremendously good spot, but getting Butler out of there, still no wins. If Butler is out of there, it helps a little. Still no Winslow. There's a couple better defensive matchups now where I can see him having a little more success against the Duncan Robinsons, and Dirk Jones Jr. isn't particularly good against Bulldog type players like Melo, so I can see him bodying him for some extra work there. Dirk Jones Jr. with Winslow out, I think is pretty good right now at 3,300. And I don't know if I remembered to update his ranking when I did one of the recent fixes, but I'm a pretty big fan of his at this point. He would probably point per dollar be in that same mix with Porter and the guards for Portland. So when we get an ownership update, I'll try to contextualize that and rank them a little bit better for that. But it's so as far as Miami goes, I would probably, of the value guards, rank my appeal of them. I think all sites, Dragic, then Nunn, then Hero right now.
And that's assuming Butler plays, or
that is assuming Butler is out. If Butler is in, I have significantly less interest in those guys, just because you're dealing with the minutes being halved. Now, it's not going to be the full nightmare it would have been in the event that you had Winslow coming back, which probably, I think, took minutes off Dirk Jones Jr. and Duncan Robinson the most, but would just, even divvy up the ball handling responsibilities a little more. But these guys at home in a well-priced matchup, I like getting a piece of these guys. There's some really interesting questions today. And again, they're obviously cheap. None is all the way down at, I think, $4,500 on DraftKings. That's a very tolerable price when you still have Winslow and if Butler is out. If Butler is in, I'm going to be a big fan of Jimmy Butler. This is going to, again, most of the time, not impact his performance. And it's just going to knock his ownership from where it should have been in an outstanding matchup at back under $8,000. Still no Winslow there, helps him a little bit. Is going to knock his ownership down to the teens or something like that. So if Butler's in, I like a lot of Butler. If Butler is out, Dirk Jones Jr. becomes a very good value play for me. Again, I'll have to check ownership to contextualize that a little better. And Dragic or Nunn become guys I'm very interested in at 5,100 and 45.
All right. Chat for fun here. I'm going to drop 5 head-to-heads into the DK $1. Jump on in, have some fun. Used to do this back at FanVice and at Roto Grinders. Team free money. So I'm kind of instituting that one again. So I'll put those in there. It'll be worth a chuckle. But
Yeah, we should get Butler news in a bit. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's hit
the
the next game I think is a good one, Eddie. For do you want to? Let me rephrase that. Do you want to skip Minnesota and Cleveland just because we don't know the Minnesota?
Let's skip it because we can. I think we should do the Lakers game, then the Suns game, and then back to that one because the Lakers game should be fairly quick to analyze. The Suns Memphis game one is important. We should give as much time as possible after we get through the other one, and then hopefully we can get some Minnesota news. Someone saying done over Hero. Yes, I would rather play none. I assume is what we're looking for there. Over Hero, yes.
All right. With regards to the Lakers, again, they're 14-point favorites. We have a 220 over/under here. Detroit coming in on the back-to-back. No Blake. Potentially Markieff Morris. It doesn't really move the needle for me. And then Alex Caruso is the only Laker that is questionable. Anthony Davis listed as probable with the right shoulder. So I'm assuming when they say probable, it means he's going to
go. One would presume he has not missed a probable game this year, and he's been probable maybe every game, if not very close to every game. So Detroit, yeah, this is a legitimately extremely difficult matchup. They are obviously the biggest dogs of the night. Again, we have 4 games on the slate for DraftKings, 3 for FanDuel. The other 3 games, including this Laker game, ranked 215 to 220 and over under, and the Memphis game is a fairly relevant 235, 236. So it is significantly the fastest game of the night. Minutes are fairly well focused at this point. Especially with Phoenix, who ran out a really short rotation. It's worth mentioning very briefly when you look at teams, a team with the record they currently have, like the Suns, who are 14-21, give or take a game, would be looking to start, developing and doing stuff. They actually are tightening it up and making more plays based on winning games now than you would normally expect them to, and running a tighter rotation. That has something to do with the fact that in the East, I think it's 7th and 8th. And in the West, the 8th seed are going to go to teams right now that are well under 500. It's sort of the same deal with Portland, I think, is a similar record. But you have Portland and Phoenix are both, again, 14-20, give or take a game either side. And I think Phoenix is a game behind Portland for the 8th seed or something. So they're, still definitely considering, playoff run a real possibility. And you see that affected across the roster in them running a tight rotation last game. In Devin Booker's minutes picking up, really. He's played, 37 to 40 minutes, 5-6 games in a row. So it's just relevant to keep in the back of your mind where some of these teams are playing a little more to win than you might expect at this point of the year. So, yeah, getting into this game, let's see where to begin. So if Markieff comes back, you're going to end up with a mess at power forward. Sekou, played some 38 minutes last game. DraftKings, that price is already very difficult for me. I think he's $5,000 on the nose. FanDuel, Sekou Doumbouya is $3,500. He's still the floor and makes a pretty compelling option. And again, they just have the 3-game slate. So maybe we have this news by then. Maybe not. This game still takes place 2.5 hours after that slate locks. But you're making, a wager there. Now, what exactly happens with the minutes here is anybody's guess. If Markieff comes back, who starts? Does he start? Does Sekou start? Obviously, Christian Wood isn't going to start. I still have interest in Christian Wood at $4,100 in FanDuel. He can get there because the game blows out. He can get there because he just scores 30 fantasy points in 22 minutes. Lots of complaints about him yesterday, and he had 3 fantasy points in the first half. He ended with like 22, I think. And again, he was basically FanDuel only for me. He's still that number, and you obviously get some immediate leverage off Sekou, and it's not that weird it's not hard to envision a scenario where Sekou gets in some foul trouble guarding parts of, Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and, JaVale and Dwight aren't necessarily easy loads to handle. And you get 26 minutes of, Christian Wood, and he, drops a monster. So, without news, if we had no news on FanDuel as that comes to lock at 7:30, I would have some of both of those guys at power forward, and I imagine Christian Wood will be pretty low owned after not being tremendous last night. He was, I think, 25% on FanDuel last night. Shorter slate now, obviously, but I still think that comes down and ends up being like in the mid-teens, maybe even lower. So I'd get on top of that. Sekou, you're obviously, taking some sort of risk there, but it's a risk with both those guys. So there's a lot of really good value on FanDuel, especially with what just opened up. So I guess I'm a little disinclined towards it. Obviously, tremendous game last night, but this matchup is not those Warriors. This matchup is these Lakers, and that is very night and day. So even if Markieff was out, I would have a projection for Sekou of like 32 minutes and 23 fantasy points, which is getawayable. So that's a long talk about Sekou. Dirk Rose, you can always play. It's a really tough matchup. I'm never really thrilled with 6K Dirk Rose, but obviously still no Blake, still no Kennard. Sure, I would have some. It's a 4-game slate. It's a very poor matchup. So I would have 8-10%. I imagine the field is somewhere in that range. Really don't like ever playing Tony Snell against the Lakers. Certainly isn't a wake up and take notice spot for me. Drummond, I mentioned it's not ideal for him. And again, I'm a big Andre Drummond stan, but I have him projected for like 46 fantasy points, which at his price and with the plethora of 6 and 7K centers we previously discussed, doesn't make him jump off the page. I'd have some, but appropriately concerned there. Tim Frazier will continue to start. I would have some at $3,300. I would much rather regardless have Dirk Jones Jr. and Gary Trent and several other guys, but I'd have a couple shares there because one of these games you could play 20 minutes and get 30 fantasy points, and he is dirt cheap and nobody wants to play him for good reason. I'd rather play him than Svi Mikhailuk. Revenge aside, I know everyone likes revenge. You can get to Bruce Brown a little easier on FanDuel because shooting guard has 5 playable guys, a little more now again. With potential news. So I don't know. Did I talk about everyone? I talked about everyone on Detroit, certainly.
Would you play Drummond or probably LeBron and Davis on the same cash lineup? Also, Tristan Thompson out with illness.
Okay, well, we got to get right to that then. Especially with that news, it certainly seems more viable now. So yes, there's a lot of really good value, and they are both. I mean, they are finally sort of priced appropriately. Like they were hanging around that whole 98 10K range for well too long when they are 11K players, and now they basically cost
Jimmy
11K
Butler's
everywhere.
out as well.
All right, now we're having a party. Okay, no, that's great. We got time. Again, I prefer this news 20 minutes from now. It's easier on me. This is easier for me when it comes out a half hour before now, but it costs you money. Every time I hear someone go, "Thank God we got this news now," I'm like, the only reason you should want news earlier is if you are stupid or inefficient. Like, I'm sorry, but every time people are like, "Oh, thank God I have an hour and a half to react to that," it's like, yes, thank God any edge that existed has evaporated. Great news. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, Lakers real quick. Yes, you can play LeBron and Anthony Davis in cash. I don't think I get there on DK, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's where I ended on FanDuel, especially with guys out news that just hit, and we can play Fraggle Rock himself, Jim Henson. I know it's John. So again, Lakers basically every day you're going to end up in this situation for me. I like Rondo at $3,900 off the bench. I would have some reasonable tournament exposure there with the potentiality of Caruso being out. I think that's a fun swap. Not a lot, 5-10%, but I would make sure I have some Rondo. It's a good matchup, so I can see getting to Kuzma. I think he's 4,800 on both sites. Very similar to that Carmelo Anthony type line. Does not do a hell of a lot other than give you, a few rebounds in his bucket of points, and isn't terribly efficient. So just a guy I think is well overrated. And again, we made some hay the other day where he was fairly popular, and I just crapped all over him because with both those guys in, that's rarely going to be a brilliant play. Can you randomly bang the 40 out of Kyle Kuzma one of these days? Sure, but it's a lot less likely than Colin Sexton for $300 more on FanDuel or any number of other guys in that range for me. So, all right, let's do one of the two relevant games now. Let's do the out news. Let's go back to Miami.
All right, so I haven't confirmed it, but some people are saying Dirk Jones Jr. is going to start.
I would expect that to be the case.
Here's the Heat. It's none Derek Jones Jr., Robinson, Leonard, and Adebayo.
Yeah, that's what I would expect.
And Markieff is out.
Okay, look at this. All this money being wasted, but it's easier for me.
Blake Griffin out as expected, too. That's be quiet now.
Wow, look at them. I mean, people are very happy now. They should not be, but people are very happy. They're like, I feel so good we got this. It's like the late swap thing where people are passionately advocating for something that absolutely costs them money day in, day out. But I'm glad you're happy, even if you're losing money. So,
Justin Swearinger, $25 late chat. Thank you. It's your turn.
Thanks. Did he have a question or anything? Or
he's topping Dave.
Him some money?
He's waiting for Dave. Challenged him.
He's topping Dave.
Yes.
Is that like on a live stream? Because I'd like to see that.
That will be later. That will be YouTube chat after dark.
That's live after lock.
That'll be on the Fast Eddie for Twitch. One night only.
Yeah, there we go. One night only. I'm wearing pants today. We did have a good day. The one day I didn't wear pants. So don't play Jimmy Butler. Get him out of there. NFL Football Sunday, you're gonna have Jimmy Butler at 1.7% owned. So your rate got a little better, everybody. Congratulations. Well done. Let me check pricing everywhere because again, during my Heat preparation point of the day, all these guys were in. So I think Duncan Robinson will end up being sort of the forgotten guy here too, and he does deserve an extra cookie because my man does put up a lot of minutes. So I have a lot of interest in Miami now. So just give me a minute. I want to take it all in. That's what Dave said when he was on top of. Sorry. All right. I guess that'd be bottom. Shout out to our sponsors, Rated PG. Okay. All right, I got that. Let me project this.
While Eddie's looking at that, a reminder, we do have promo code 2020. We'll get you 20 days of Osmo premium content for $20. I see in the YouTube chat, Moose just joined, and he won $50 last night. He said, hey, it has paid for itself already.
There you go. Juicy. I like to hear it. I love it. Okay. I really like all these guys. You're gonna have to give me a minute and a guess at ownership. Let me check for an ownership update
8
for me.
minutes ago. They're still calculating the
there's quite a bit going on here. So
we do have projection update, but not ownership.
I'm curious how we have them projected. I could look and cheat, but
I've got it up for DK. Who are you looking for?
Well, I'm usually the one in my head's with them pointer to what they have anyway. Okay. I'm sort of teasing. I know where this line's. All right, ownership, and they'll defend them like that. So Bazemore will cross guard. Okay. So minutes will go there. I have a sort of little graphical hooey-dooey here that I should publish at some point, but okay. All right, so I will somewhat one sec that download that old rotation. Okay. All right, they're there, and Scal is out, so he'll play there. Okay, and we can project him to do that. All right, yes. For the Heat, I am pretty significantly interested in Adebayo, Dragic, Nunn, Robinson, Hero, Jones Jr. I don't think going, Olynyk crazy or Myers Leonard makes a particular amount of sense. And it isn't a game in which they should need, Myers Leonard doesn't project as a game against Melo and the other guys who are going to be running out at the 4 where they need to do that rotation tweak they do sometimes in a row. At the moment, I would gather that point per dollar projection in order my favorites would be Dirk Jones Jr. would be a hair over Dragic, would be a hair over Nunn, would be a hair over Robinson, would be a hair over Tyler Hero. Ownership, I'm making a lot of wild guesses here. Maybe it'll go like this. So my least favorite in tournaments, I'll work backwards, is probably going to be Duncan Robinson just because of slightly limited upside, slightly worse defensive assignment. I'd want to make sure I have some. He wasn't going to be very owned, and there is extra usage, guaranteed minutes and stuff there. So I'd want to make sure I had like if I had to guess the percentage I'd throw at these guys now. We'll try it that way. I'd guess I'd have 8 to 10% Duncan Robinson, 12 to 15 Tyler Hero, probably closer to 12 actually, because I can't get rid of all that, and I have all that Porter and the guys on Portland as well, and then we're gonna have to compare these guys against each other in a second. I would probably have somewhere to the order of 25% Nunn, 30% Dirk Jones Jr., and 35% Goran Dragic, which I expect to be a bit of a stand over the field. But I think that's the first spot I'm looking to. Let's handle some questions on this game real quick and then talk about the others.
They mostly wanted your take on the rankings, so I think you got it there on that one. For the Miami side was where they really wanted to hear it.
Yeah, and that's I think that is how I would have them ranked right now, and roughly how much exposed I would be to them. I would be significantly owned. McCollum out is another significant degradation to the defense of this Portland team that is already pretty bad and road tripping across the country. And these guys are all priced extremely well for what's a very solid matchup. So really interested in Jones Jr., Dragic, and Nunn, and wanting to make sure I still have exposure to Robinson and Hero. And it is an additional boost for Adebayo, who I liked from the beginning. So I think my Adebayo exposure would be probably similar to Dirk Jones Jr. at the top of the guys I'm most interested in, somewhere in like the 33-35 range.
So how are you liking, back just at the tippy top, Damian Lillard now?
Yeah, I like him quite a bit. Butler being out is a not irrelevant distinction for him as far as their ability to guard him in crunch time. So the price not as advantageous as I would like, and still not by any terms what I would consider a good matchup. But FanDuel, especially where I think he's a little cheaper, we've opened up a fair bit of a ceiling here, and he will have an easier go of it than anyone else on this team. So Lillard, I probably have as somewhat of a priority because I don't think as many people get there as they should. Obviously, the ownership is going to bump pretty significantly with the McCollum news, but probably not as much as it should. And I think he carries a pretty nice ceiling, not LeBron, not AD ceiling.
But he becomes better than Whiteside and better than Bam.
Yes, I already had him a hair better than Whiteside. Okay. Relative to Bam, it's a little site dependent. FanDuel, yes, he's massively better than Bam. DraftKings, trickier. Bam at 7,600, I'm a big fan of. If I projected them out now. I have a feeling, and I'm curious what Alex has him projected for, but I am curious. I think at this point, I would have Lillard somewhere around 46 and have Adebayo somewhere around 39, which would make them pretty.
We have DK Lillard 49, Bam 46, and Whiteside 46, 44.
By that extension, and I didn't boost Bam yet, which would be another pointer or two, then you clearly want Bam more. Like you said, 49 and 46. That's, in my opinion, a little too much for Bam. There's the if you think Bam is as an average projection of 46, he should be very close to the best play on the slate, and that's better than slightly 6x as an average for a guy who's priced in the mid sevens. That's a very healthy number. I have him a touch under 40 now. I'd probably have him closer to 40 or 41 because I didn't rerun the front court. But I like Bam quite a bit. And if you go with Alex's numbers, which will be better than mine, I presume more than half the time. He's a very smart dude. That's a pretty brilliant number there. But we now want significant exposure to this game. That Detroit Laker game is now looking kind of stanky. Like, obviously, there are these spend-up options on the Lakers, and either of them is capable of dropping 80. Anthony Davis is capable of dropping 100, a little more so than LeBron at this point. But the mid-range options are just really, really appealing at this point, and the value options, just the 4, 5, 6, 7K guys, really feel good. Getting up to 11 for those guys is tough. You can obviously build it, and there are worlds in which that works out, and we now have all these value guards on both teams at 3K, I think, is Trent, and 35, I think, is... Do we have Portland starting lineup yet, by the way? That should be landing momentarily.
Someone was saying Gary Trent Jr., but I don't have that confirmed.
That is my guess that it would be Trent. I think that's a little more likely, and they keep Simmons with the second unit. But we have...
Oh, here we go. It just came out. Lillard, Trent Jr., Bazemore, Whiteside, and Carmelo.
Melo, yeah. As expected. So, yeah, you want a lot of this game. you won a lot of the Memphis Phoenix game. That Detroit Laker game also being, obviously news pending to a certain degree, and there's just a mess in Minnesota. Now, the ownership is also going to flock these places. So it's a really interesting situation, but try to make sure your Portland, Miami guys, again, are in the right part of your lineup on DraftKings. And again, you can't play them on FanDuel. So
Dragic or Rubio, cross-comparing games now.
I would be more excited to play Goran Dragic at this point.
And then Booker, and let's go into the Phoenix game. Booker or Rubio? Oubre or Booker?
Yeah, that's very close for me. Oubre, Booker, and Rubio all grade well for me. But their prices are, appropriately when you're up on 7,100 on Oubre and a little bit less than that for Rubio, and Booker back appropriately where he should be, getting tons of minutes in a really nice spot. This is the third time this year that we've gotten Memphis and Phoenix. So we have a lot of clock on this. I will say I think the over-under is too high. So I'll go ahead and I'll risk my sports betting record. I would bet the under on this game. Okay. That is a really significant number. They did not get close to it either of the two times they played earlier this year. I don't remember those totals, but they were 220 to 225, I think, both games. You have Ayton back, which changes the pace up a little bit, but not to that extended degree. And having rewatched both those games recently, I don't see it getting quite that high. It's not. It should be higher than whatever those numbers were of low 220s. And there's obviously some very anemic defense here, but you still have Valanciunas and Baines presumably getting a lot of time. That does slow things down to an extent that I think a more appropriate number would be 231 or 2, and that's far enough off that I feel reasonably safe in recommending that. So I'll put my 5-3 record on the line and say that I would bet the under. I don't think I'll have time to do it myself at this point, but it's a late game. I might have time. But yeah, I would look at that. Let's talk about Cleveland.
Yep, hit Cleveland. Guys, I just put in another 5 head-to-heads on DK username. EMAC, have some fun with those.
Nice.
I'm now building my cash lineup because it changed with all of this news. So
again, leave some spots on DraftKings. I presume John Henson will start, and he will probably be... he's probably going to be really close to my... my favorite value play of the day. I might prefer him to a lot of these guys. So Tristan Thompson has missed, I believe, only one game this year, and it was prior to John Henson being healthy. And Kevin Love started at center. I'm almost sure. I'll double check that in a second. Henson is a really good fantasy basketball player, and this is a particularly brilliant spot for him, and he should have to soak up a lot of time there. So I like Kevin Porter Jr. a lot. If you get news that John Henson is starting, I'd end up projecting him for like 28 minutes and 28 fantasy points, and that's going to feel pretty good at 36 or whatever the DK price is. So don't sleep on John Henson starting. And again, because of the football and all the things we mentioned before, the closer that news comes out to 7:30, a lot of people are going to sleep on that. I know this all looks great now, but making sure you pivot to some of this Cleveland Minnesota game is good. The ownership is going to make them better plays. These other guys are going to be better plays. That game is going to be messy. There is a lot of uncertainty. Talking about Minnesota at this point is almost a pointless exercise for me because everybody is on some sort of dependent if-then statement. If both Teague and Wiggins are out, I really like Jared Culver, especially on FanDuel. If one of them is in, he's playable. If both of them are in, I want absolutely none. If all the aforementioned guys are out, I'm fairly interested in Shabazz Napier again, especially on FanDuel at 5,600. If Teague is in, I want basically none. If Teague and Wiggins are in, I want actually none. If all the guys in the backcourt are out, Treveon Graham, if he returns, who is questionable, I'd be interested in the minimum on FanDuel and 3,200 on DraftKings. If Towns is out, obviously you can play some Gorgie Jang, who's still perfectly reasonable at 6K. I don't like him compared to Ayton or Henson or any of these other great centers we're talking about, but you're going to get him at sort of pretty minuscule ownership at this point because of the possibility that Towns shows up. If Towns is in, that's tough because he isn't priced down at 10K. But if Wiggins and Teague, for example, are out, then I'd have to have some interest there, and you're going to get him at 3% owned, and Karl Anthony Towns playing for the first time in a month, if he's unfettered at 3% owned, is a pretty brilliant thing. But just everything is so incredibly up in the air with that team. likely enough dudes will be out that I'm really going to like Robert Covington on FanDuel regardless. He's $5,700 on FanDuel. That's pretty great. Unless like everybody is in, that's still going to math out as a really nice play for me. He'll be pretty popular. But
how about 63 on DK will be the next follow-up question for people.
Fine. Not as good, obviously. I think with all the news we have coming out, you're sort of pushed away from it. He's not at 63 as good as Ja Morant at 62 for me. He's a little bit worse projected than Rubio points per dollar. He's a little bit worse projected than Oubre at 71, although very similar at that point. So again, FanDuel at this point, which again will not lock before this game, so we will have some news. If assuming a median case and half the guys are in, I would end up having some 30% Robert Covington. 5,700 feels pretty good. If everyone's in, obviously that would knock that down. DraftKings, that number would be closer to like 15% for me. It's not a game we're terribly looking to target outside of the evident value plays that have opened or will open up. Again, this is a messy game. They played this game 8-9 days ago. They played on December 28th, give or take a day. And it was a dreadful game. It was 95-87, and everyone looked like absolute garbage. And like nobody was good, even with half the teams missing. So like we just saw this game. I think Teague played of the guys who are currently questionable in that game. So much crap. I'm really trying to separate all these games with all the injuries going on. But there was no Wiggins, there was no Towns. And Teague wasn't great, and Napier got the start, and he wasn't great, and it was just an ugly game. So I like some of the value guys, and I want to get them in there at 5% owned as opposed to 20 to 40 on the Parters and Dragics and Kendrick Nuns of the world. But definitely don't need to go nuts, but I try to make sure I had a piece. But again, it's a lot of if-then statements. But again, the quick review. No Wiggins. I'm going to have a lot of interest in Teague on either FanDuel or DraftKings, obviously pending on news, if there's going to be a limit, anything like that. But if he is all systems go, starting or coming off the bench, he is a guy who carries 50-point upside, and he's 5 on FanDuel, 5-4 on DK. I'd have a lot of interest in that. Culver, if Teague and Wiggins are out, I'd have a lot of interest in. Again, on FanDuel, more expressly, where he's only 4,500. That's a really cheap price. Rocco, we talked about a lot. And getting some Andrew Wiggins, if Towns is still out, is going to make a lot of sense. It's just like we were talking about before. Guy can go absolutely apeshit bonkers and give you 50. And in a vacuum, if we knew right now that Towns was going to be out, and regardless of the rest, and Wiggins was going to be in, Wiggins at 7K would end up being 24% owned. And depending when the news comes out, he's going to be 4% owned. And we've seen this already this year. So I would aggressively look to go there. If you have no Wiggins and no Teague, Napier gets pretty appealing, so on and so forth. But it's just an endless string of if-thens.
All right. Shit. Oops. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Looks like Fantasy Cruncher may not be exporting at the moment. That's no bueno.
So yeah, Trent Jr. is starting. I like Trent Jr. a lot. You can put him in any lineup. I think he's the minimum on FanDuel. I know he's the minimum on DK. Points per dollar, he will project extremely well. I would have him for somewhere to the area of 28 minutes and 21 fantasy points, which feels very good for $3,000. I would, in one tournament lineup, much like yesterday, with the whole, just as an immediate object example, with the whole McRae Troy Brown thing, probably rather play Anthony Simmons, who I have projected slightly less. It costs $500 more, but the leverage on the field is evident. Again, we just saw it, so that's why we keep bringing that up.
All right, this is an interesting question on DK. Would you go with Crowder and Melo or Dirk Jones Jr. and Oubre? I'm leaning this.
I would probably play Dirk Jones Jr. and Oubre. Melo, I've discussed at length. He's obviously fine to play. Crowder, I would, another, again, great example. I would, in one lineup, rather play Dylan Brooks than Jay Crowder. They are fairly similar guys as far as their production goes, and Jay Crowder is coming off one good game and one tremendous game. I think it was the matinee yesterday, so we didn't see a lot of it. But Jay Crowder had, I believe, 62 fantasy points yesterday, where he had a 5x3. He had whatever it was, 25, 8, 7, 3 and 3 steals and blocks. Like, he just went absolutely apeshit crazy. But he's also playing on a back-to-back. And in that game yesterday was, I believe, questionable or probable coming in with an ankle injury he had sustained. Yeah, so I don't know. They've already been a little tenuous with him in games already this year, and I suspect he ends up being owned significantly more than Dylan Brooks, who in a good matchup can do similar things. He's not quite the player Jay Crowder is, doesn't contribute with as many peripherals, and minutes aren't quite as secure. But, even if you give me 28, 29 minutes instead of what is probably 32 out of Jay Crowder, although, I am a little concerned with the back-to-back as previously mentioned. I would still probably look to go to one pivot. And again, I don't want to make all these pivots. If I list 6 players and say, here's the guys who are more popular and I project a little better, I would rather play this guy in one lineup. I probably don't want to do all 6. I probably want to do 1 or 2 or 3 where I'm like, I have this guy projected a little less, as does everyone. But rather than being a slave to the algorithm, I'll make this pivot to try to get some slightly different ownership. You don't want to do that on all the guys usually. Like it's none of the plays we're talking about are bad plays, though. None of these guys doesn't project fairly well. But I mean, Simmons has a real floor. Trent, a little harder to get to the floor. $500 cheaper. A little harder to get to the floor there. Simmons, has a real floor. His minutes could not increase that much, and usage could not increase that much. That could happen. Same thing with Dylan Brooks. There's a real floor there if you go there instead of Crowder. But I like making a pivot or two like that in the other ones we've described.
All right, sorry, I got a panic mode here, Eddie. If you want to look at some questions, that would be great. For those of you looking, Fantasy Cruncher just started downloading, so...
Yes. So go ahead and take care of that. I am, rather than taking questions and going to news, the Cavs are going to start as expected. Porter Jr. is getting the start. Henson is getting the start. So we didn't talk about this much. FanDuel, my favorite play there is probably, I don't know what Henson costs on FanDuel. I'm not even sure he's a center, and they made him Durfee power forward for a while. We don't have to worry about FanDuel. That locks in an hour and a half. So we'll make it a DK-specific commentary for me for the next minute or two. The Cavs are starting Garland, Sexton, Porter, Osman, and Henson. I like Henson quite a bit. I like Porter quite a bit. Porter probably still going to be my favorite overall. It obviously changes a little site to site. You can run Chetty. Again, we have some reasonable sample there. He has not, popped off Sans Kevin Love. We had one game, Sans Kevin Love, Sans Larry Nance, and again, Porter Jr. was the one who got there. I feel actually more secure in his minutes. I'm projected for the most minutes on this team. I like Porter a lot. I like Henson a lot. I would have some shares of Chetty Osman, but the field will be 10, 12%. I would end up right about there. FanDuel, I think Colin Sexton's an excellent buy at $5,100. Is some usage and time opened up for him? I would certainly want to get there. Ante Zizic will probably find his way into the rotation here. I would rather go for Alfonso McKinney if I was going to take a stab at some long shot bench action here. He should end up playing 26 minutes or so in an ugly game at the absolute flat minimum. So I would probably try to get 10% Alfonso McKinney, and I think the field will be well under that. But I would want to have more than the field there. Other things to talk about. I'm going to go on full news blitz, because that's probably the most useful thing I can do, although it seems like we got most of what we wanted to get.
I think we've hit most everything. I'm just
a little earlier than I would have liked, but took nearly that long to talk about everything, so... Yes. CJ McCollum still does not have the mark of Kane, someone just said on DK, so that's nice. Dude's gonna suck up some ownership, so thanks, DK, for being sloppy. Nothing there, nothing there. Down to about 90 seconds.
Apparently I'm running a lot of people in the first game. Not something I usually do, but whatevs.
I think it's probably right to be running, on DraftKings. And I guess we're only talking about DraftKings now that I think about it. Yep. I would think 3 or 4 guys would be right. 2 is obviously just fine.
I've got a few from each side. Boom! But at least it's fingers crossed. Okay, I'm not playing with zeros. This happens all too often. Goodness gracious. But there we are. All right, so we're coming into lock here. So we had 2 questions that people wanted to talk about. It's okay because it'll help FanDuel, and it's also people can adjust for DK.
We're under a minute, so.
Oh, I thought we had hit it.
No, we have not.
All right, we'll hit it right about well, we're on enough of delay that they're going to hit it by the time they're hearing this. So the questions are: what do you think Wiggins will play, and if he does, who does that impact? He was a full participant in practice. I didn't confirm this, but that's what someone said.
He was. That's correct. I think Wiggins will play. Who does that impact? Everyone. Everyone on the team gets worse if Wiggins plays. So it is, and we are locked. Yeah, it is a negative for everyone. Everyone you play on that team wants Wiggins out. Period. Both teams, really, come to think of it. But yeah, there's it most directly affects Teague, Trevion Graham, Shabazz Napier, guys who are going to share the backcourt / front wing with him. But yeah, it's you generally, I think Wiggins very possibly plays, and I think swapping to that is a critical thing to do today. I think he ends up being beyond 5% owned. The ownership in this game is going to be crazy. This is going to be an exciting daddy like.
Yeah, and then another question someone just asked Daniel Jones, do we have the Seattle Philly game on another screen on the side? I don't. I am wearing my Seattle Super Bowl 49 shirt, or I think it's 49 shirt here, but Eddie, generally, we have enough going on that I can't focus on multiple things during this. It's all DFS all the time for that. But they would like you to, as I'm downloading the Daddy Likes file, remind everybody what to do in case of fire drills, because there was a little bit of one there on Cruncher. It ended up working just in time for people to get their uploads. But how do you do this? What do you have backup plans? What do you do with your lineup earlier in the day, etc., etc.?
Yeah, I'll speak on that for a minute. It should be pointed out that, again, because I am, due to my day job, legally precluded from playing now, my experience with this is going to be a little old, but it should be a largely personal mission on your part anyway. So I would start by saying, whenever you put in a placeholder lineup, put in guys who are going to play. I think it happened to me twice over the 5 years that I played every day, where I ended up having several $1,000 or at least $1,000 running with a lineup with basically minimum price guys, where I just went or out guys or something, where there was no late swap and I threw that money away. So if you're entering a placeholder lineup at the beginning of the day just to enter some contests, take 12 seconds instead of 6 seconds and pick dudes who will play and spend at least 90% of the salary. Give yourself an out. So that sounds ridiculous, but one of the important concepts when we talk about ROI or bankroll management or a process like this is to understand that you can make your whole year on one day. Like, you correctly late swapping, correctly pivoting away, correctly handling news can handle 2 months of losses or a year of losses. In my 5 years, again, I was more of a cash player, but I had basically $100,000 a day and a half dozen $50,000 GPP days over the time that I was playing. And at least 3 of them were reacting very quickly to news. And it was a pain for me because, again, I played multiple sites. At that time, I was playing 6 or 7 sites a day. So I really worked the fire drill because when you are playing multiple sites or multiple lineups, one of the disadvantages, perhaps the most significant one, is your rigidity and your inflexibility to deal with news optimally. You can certainly make an argument that playing with Fantasy Cruncher and mass multi-entering is a key part of being profitable in this market right now, and I wouldn't disagree with you. And the advantages are evident, but the disadvantage is you cannot, to the same degree of specificity and precision, improve in the event of news. So if something goes haywire and I'm playing one lineup with $10,000 behind it, and you're playing 150 lineups broken down into $10,000, you are not going to be able to make changes as efficiently as I can. I can protect every dollar in 20 seconds and hopefully have a plan to do so, or 30 seconds. You can help, obviously, but you're going to have rougher tools to handle that. So minimizing that disadvantage is critical. And it's one of many things you should fire drill. And again, I'll tie in another concept that I talk about way more than I should, but I do it partially because I literally never hear anyone else talk about it in DFS, is you should vary the size of your bets. You are going to have 2-3% dead money on Jimmy Butler tonight, I have a feeling. I think I said 1.8 or whatever during the show. There's going to be a lot of Jimmy Butler ownership. The fact that it's a Sunday and NFL is entirely relevant. So that should affect how you're playing. The entire concept of, counting cards in blackjack or playing Hold'em is about getting more money on the table when you are advantaged as opposed to when you are not. So yes, you always want to act to protect and defend and improve your lineups in the event that news comes out. But you also want to enhance your ability to make money. And again, this all runs back to you can win your year in a day. So being able to handle these things is massively critical. It will come up 1 to 13 times in the year. I don't know how many times it'll happen this year. We've really only had 1 or 2 so far. Most of our big days with the JaVale McGee day and the other things have been fading chalk or good low owned plays. But you will have, count on 1 or 2 hands times this year where you get news at 6:58. And if you can correctly go get that guy out, put that guy in, put him in there, you end up in this scenario where you have a brilliant play who in a vacuum would be 40% owned, 1% owned, and the rest of the field has 15% dead money. And critically, you're playing for 10 times as much as you would be otherwise. So have a fire drill, have a way to, like right now, let's assume we got news at
Wiggins is in. We just got that news. What would you like to do? Literally, we just got that news.
Beautiful. So let's assume we expected let's assume we got I don't know what's a good example based on today's slate. Let's assume we got news at 2 minutes before the lock of the final game, and there were showdown slates, we'll say, that Anthony Davis was going to be out. How do you spend more money? Because you should have a way, and it is critical if you want to be a successful DFS player, to flood the table with chips because you are advantaged. Because Anthony Davis is going to be 68% owned in Showdown. And if the news comes out at 9:58 for the 10 p.m. game that Anthony Davis isn't playing, dude's still going to be 40% owned in Showdown. So all of a sudden, rather than playing a game where you're paying 15, 16% rake, you're basically playing a game that is going to overlay 30, 40, 50%. What exactly do you do? What buttons do you click? You should just sort of pretend it happens once in a while. Set an alarm on your phone to pretend something goes wonky. Do it at 3 a.m, not when it's actually there, and go like, all right, I would go here. I would first join all the $109 head-to-heads, or I would just know what you would do, because those 10 seconds can make the difference between you making 100 grand or losing 100 grand in your year. So it sounds dumb as hell. Like you're putting on a headband and the Rocky music comes on. It's like, all right, I'm going to train up for what I do if I get news. But yeah, it can all the other things that we put so much time into. We spend so much time planning for this and that and the other thing, and research and watching tape and listening to my dumbass, or whatever you do as part of your preparation. It's worth taking, 5 minutes a month to have a shit went weird plan. So Wiggins is in. I don't know about the other 7 players. Well, I think there were 5 other questionable players. So I would need all the Minnesota news and then a conversation.
Yeah, we don't have all of it yet.
Okay, so let's do some ownership chappity doo and.
All right, who is the most owned player? And I will call out my percentages as well for where I ended up, just so you can
just
see
this game.
Yep.
DraftKings.
DraftKings, $15,
$15 entry.
Yep, 225,000.
225. They ticked it up a peg there. Most owned player. Oh, Jesus. There's going to be a lot of owned players in this game now. You're going to have huge amounts of Bam, Lillard, Dirk Jones. I'm going to guess that your top 4 are going to be Bam, Lillard, Dirk Jones, and Kendrick Nunn at 4,500.
Very nice.
Are those your top 4?
And they are all significantly above everybody else.
Right. So those guys are all 30 to 50. Yep. Right? They're all somewhere in that level?
Yep. Okay. Derek Jones is 42.
Oh, he's highest?
He's
All
the
right.
highest.
I wouldn't have said that. You should have let me screw that up. I think I was going to say Lillard.
Well,
But
Lillard is 41.2, so it's
oh, yeah.
they're within a percent. Statistically, it's going to depend what tournament you're
Contest,
in.
yeah.
Because I bet they flip spots. I got 65% Lillard.
Yeah, that's
Oops.
I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have that much. And again, pre-lock news, you get this nut stuff. Watch what you're gonna like. I really like Damian Lillard without CJ McCollum. I also really like Andrew Wiggins without Karl Anthony Towns. I like Lillard a little more, but Lillard is gonna be now you said what, 41 and change? Wiggins is gonna be 8, 12.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not high enough relative to the, and it sounds dumb, but there's easy money to make those changes. But okay, so Jones, Lillard, then none, then Adebayo, I guess.
Yeah, and they're none and Adebayo are by 1.5 apiece, so they're all close. I ended up with less. I've got Jesus. I have 50% Whiteside. Yikes. 26.
I mean, I don't mind Whiteside whatsoever. It is not a terribly good matchup for him. It is not a team, for example, we just saw it with Melo, that the coach is gonna be like, "Yeah, go out there and revenge yourself." But the DK price is more than reasonable. I mean, he's been exceptional this year. Carries a big upside with double doubles or triple doubles with blocks, which he's done a few times with. I mean, like Whiteside's a stud. So I wouldn't want 50%, but I wouldn't be crying in my milk if I had 50%. Like, that's fine. I figure the field is 20, 25.
Yeah.
On Whiteside.
Yep. Sorry, I just closed it. Let me get back
to
it.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, Whiteside's 20.
All right, so where is Hero's 20? Where's Dragic? Is he like 15? 20. I'm hoping.
Yeah, they're all within
okay. I still slightly prefer that, but these are all fine plays I would add close. Where is Melo?
Melo on I have half Melo. The normal people have.
You have half. You have 50%.
I don't want to talk about it. They have 11.5. I have.
I will say 50% Melo and 50% Whiteside seems a little. One of them. Sure, that guy can work out. You've made a stand against.
I'm sorry, 39. 39 Melo. So there you go.
That's okay. That's a little better. And assuming not much of it dovetails, assuming you have managed to separate as much as possible your Lillard Melo, because it's still
that's interesting.
The Heat, which is a really good defensive team. So yeah. I'm not thrilled with 2 of them, and 3 of them would feel pretty bad for me. But where is Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, half my teams have both of them. The other half don't. Jimmy Butler is. Do you want to guess? You said 1.5. Said
1.7 or 1.8 during the show.
5.7.
Woo! Wee! There's half your rake, everybody. You know what I'm saying?
CJ McCollum.
I promise this is the last time I'm going to say it. But yeah, but go ahead, give me McCollum too. It makes my point more. Hey, there you go. So. Yeah, there's a little more than half your rake just got taken care of, everybody. So again, if you play $100 a day at a 15% rake, should you play $100 when there's a 7% rake, or more accurately, especially when there's negative rake? This is also the same reason that obviously you play a lot when tournaments overlay. So when our friends at Super Draft or Fantasy Draft and have these tournaments that overlay, yeah, you should get generally every dollar in there, unless you're objectively horrible. Once tournaments start overlaying, you should flood the shit out of them. Like if you played NFL this year, I helped a couple people prepare for week 1. You should have played infinite money at Fantasy Draft, infinite money at Yahoo, and then started looking at other places. Because it was literally $1 in at those sites was worth $1.30 back on average, and $1 in at the main sites was worth 88 cents. I don't care how much you like the main sites more. It's not worth, half of your profitability. So
yeah, that's pretty crazy. Lane Young with the $5 super chat loves the show. He's stuck right now. Would you prefer Crowder or Porter Jr.?
I prefer Porter Jr. I'm curious. I'm gonna guess that tell me Awesome's projections on those 2 players. I would be fascinated. I'm really interested to see exactly what he has them projected for, because I have a feeling this is
Crowder. We have at 26. These are DK
31 minutes or something.
Yeah,
that's almost exactly what That's almost exactly what I have him for. Yeah, minutes and points. I'd be really curious.
Kevin Porter, you want to guess?
I think Awesemo will have him for like 31 minutes and 25.
We have him for 28 and 27.
oddly high production relative to what I expect. He's going to see reasonable amounts of Covington. It's not the best spot for him. That's oddly high production, but 28 minutes, I'll just come right out and say is wrong. That's
You think
if
it
you
should
look
be
at
higher?
I'm barring something very weird happening, it will be higher. Hold on. I have my let me get my fancy algorithms working in here. Games without Kevin Love this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Download. First game. Kevin Porter started, played 31 minutes and 22 seconds because Larry Nance wasn't there. Second game, Larry Nance was there, only played 23 minutes off the bench. Third game, Larry Nance was there, still played 29 minutes off the bench. Okay, and this was back before he was as in vogue in the lineup. Fourth game without Kevin Love. Again, Larry Nance was in there and played 40 minutes in this game, so Kevin Porter played 20. And the last game without him, Larry Nance was there and played 31 minutes, and Kevin Porter still played 30 minutes in the last game that happened, which was, by the way, against the Timberwolves. So, yes, I think I would bet very heavily against 28. He's going to have to foul out or get injured, because even in a blowout, he's out there. So, yeah, that's I have him at 34 with both those guys out. That might be a minute too high or something. But
Teague and Vonleh will be game time decisions. Towns is out. Yeah, so we
okay. Well, Towns being out, get yourself some Andrew Wiggins, and we can start having either or questions involving Wiggins at this point. But yeah, that's a
where would you put
spot.
Wiggins against like Oubre and Booker and Rubio?
I'd prefer him to both of them significantly at this point.
Okay. And then how about
Wiggins I would have them projected almost all the same. Those three players I would have, unless we get news. Like I'm assuming Wiggins is ready to go, but unless we got news, I would have those three players projected very similar to each other as far as production. And Wiggins is going to be 8% owned, and those other guys are going to be 25. Like I wouldn't have them close at this point. Like literally, I'm glad it's a Sunday because me talking about him on the show constantly only moves him up 100 entries instead of 1,000. But yeah, I'd make a significant stand there. Over time, it's absolutely the right thing to do. And people are going to jump all the crap over this other game.
Beast mode. Marshawn Lynch had a first half touchdown.
Brilliant. Love that guy.
4 for 11 and a touchdown. There you go.
Hey, God, running back is a thankless goddamn job. You are just every play you get pounded. Like I played quarterback. That's much easier. Like you get hit once in a while, you're like, oh, he hit me. What is this crap about? Like running back's like, we're gonna give you the ball and you're going to be violently hit multiple times over and over. Like it's a thankless. The same thing with like the line, but the line, at least the guy who's hitting you started right in front of you and doesn't get a head of steam and isn't coming right at you and lowering his shoulder. And so like running back's a thankless goddamn job. And that guy did it. He's his own dude. Big fan of Beast Mode.
One of my buddies was when he was in freshman high school football. He went to a different school than I did, but it was a cold day. He lived in temperate Seattle. It was a cold day, and he was the defensive back. He just got rocked by somebody. Went over to the sidelines and just said, "Yeah, I'm done, coach." That was it. He said he was trying to decide if he wanted to be the soccer goalie or play DB for football, and they went to a big school. He decided from that point forward he'd be a soccer goalie. He ended up being all league, so it was a better choice.
One of the most insane things I did is when I lived in upstate New York, we had a church league where my church played in a league with other churches where we played 11 on 11, full contact, tackle, no pads football.
Oh my.
Was one of the most insane things I've ever done in my life. I'm happy I'm alive. Now, again, I played quarterback. So I only suffered through the 2 years I played it 3 concussions and some broken ribs. That was on the light end. Like literally I played, I'll say 16 games over those 2 years. And we sent, I'll go with over 16 people to the hospital. You just had full on speed head to head. It was just, I still look back and went, I can't believe we did that. Like I'd get on the field and I'd come off just a mess. I had blood and like, it was one of the most ridiculous things. I don't even know what to tell you, but it was just, I think back to it and it's one of those things where like, yeah, I did that. Like I've seen pictures of like, we kill, guy be like, oh, look, that guy's arm is pointing the wrong way now. You just big, burly church going dudes slamming into each other in the Lord's name.
All right. Last question, only because it comes from the classic Mayor McCheese.
Ooh, Nice. Tell the Hamburglar I said hello.
How are you feeling about Napier tonight with Wiggins back?
Less good.
Let's assume Teague's out just for
assuming if Teague's in, I have no interest. I would play none. I would play literally none. Which I'm not saying he's unviable at that point. He's still 58 and 63, I think, are the Napier tags. But even with Teague and Wiggins in, he can still play 29 minutes and make some shots and put up a number for you. But he's still going to be to some degree owned, and there's just all kinds of floors there. There's so many other guys with evidence ceilings. I don't think I would end up playing any at that point. So if Teague is out, I still like him just fine. He's not going to rank point per dollar for me next to many of these other guys we talked about, but 5-10% exposure, I think is just fine for Shabazz Napier. And the Cavs are a team that the Sexland backcourt. You like that, Sexland?
That is good.
Garland and Sexton. Someone said that the other day. I can't remember who it is, but the Sexland backcourt gives it up so sweet to just fantasy production in general. So certainly there is still a ceiling there, but I would not have much of a take. I would play very little, if any.
All right. Would you go with LeBron and John Henson, or would you switch to Wiggins and one of the trio of Phoenix guys?
Phoenix guys. So LeBron and Henson, or Wiggins and Oubre, Rubio, Booker.
Yeah.
And Booker's expensive enough. I'd be surprised if he actually fits into that colloquy, because there's like $1,000 differential between him and Booker, but whatever. I don't know. I agree that's very close. It's going to come down to what you're looking at and what you're stacking, and it's really going to depend on sort of what you're doing.
Yeah, Teague's now available, it sounds like.
Right. So little bit less excited about Wiggins. Just another guy who's very capable.
Vonleh's available to play. Graham's available to play. Teague's available to play.
Hey, everybody's back. So so go less nuts on Wiggins. Obviously, Towns being back would have been the worst news there, but everyone else back makes him still appealing at his ownership. With all those guys back, he would now probably rank for me. And if you looked at Awesomes, I think this would come out about the same way, a couple points less than both Oubre and Rubio at similar prices. But at the ownership, I would still want to have more than the field, because he's just a guy who is like, there's not enough defensive pressure there that he can't put up a monster. So yes, I would still want to have a lot of Wiggins, but I'd rather that Teague most notably had also been out.
All right, we are going to be out here because I want to go watch the second half of the Seahawks game. You can probably, if you're nice, Fast Eddie may spend a few minutes and answer some of those Slack chat questions.
Yeah, I'll definitely try to be around in the premium Slack in an hour as we get towards that game.
There we go. That is a bonus you get for being behind the paywall. Promo code 2020 gets you $20 days for $20 of Osmo premium content.
Oh, I wanted to ask you. Sorry, I apologize. What's the ownership on Trent and Simmons?
Oh, I just closed it. Well, I know off the top of my head, I have 8 times the field on Simmons, and I have 40%.
Yeah, you didn't hit them, and I would have thought that Gary Trent starting again. Then
Trent was higher. He was about double. I think he was. I lost the file. He was 10 or 15%, I think.
Oh, okay.
But Simmons was.
I'm a pretty 5%. Big fan of those guys at like 5% or something. So yeah, I figured you would have had Trent, somewhere higher than Simmons, and I would have slightly preferred Simmons. But they're both strong plays if they're in the single digits. Like, I'm a big fan of those guys.
Yep.
Not a great matchup, but 3K and 3.5. I mean, that's cheap, boys.
All right, but 9:30 we've got the DFS strategy show tomorrow, and we do it all over again. NHL, NBA, it's fantastic. I'm looking it up. Trent, I'm sorry. Trent was 3.2%. Simmons was 5.
Hold on, let me do my best, Jimmy Butler. 3?
3, yeah. That seemed a little. When I said it, I thought it was 13 because I was like, "That's where Carmelo was." There's no way.
That doesn't even make any sense. I don't understand. I would have thought you would have.
Deion Waiters is 0.02. So.
I mean, a lot of other a lot of other news opened up, and you want to take the guys on Miami in a vacuum against the guys against the Trailblazers with their rather anemic defense, as opposed to the guys on the Trailblazers against Miami's excellent defense. It's good. So I presume they would be lower than Dragic, whatever. But you know, Kendrick Nunn at 35% and Trent at 3%. So Simmons was higher, which is also what? But I guess part of that was we established with 10% of people playing the rake and being dumb that a lot of changes weren't made. So at the start of the day, Simmons would have been already 5, 6, 7% owned.
Well, and they could have been waiting on the later news because this was still DK too. So
we'll see. Weirdness.